Europe traveled to your country and California during the Second World War, because many of Europeans' great and Austrians' great composers had to flee the Nazi regime. And so then in California there was this seed of European music replanted. And so what is where do you see the relationship between where you have spent most of your life in America, in California, and the great European tradition who has gone to America? And in a way, we all know that music is, of course,
Yes, when I was a youngster, we had all the people that you mentioned, you know, Korngold and Waxman, and all came from either Germany or Austria. You know. They established a style of writing. Because the beginning of film in the 1930s, we didn't know what to do. We have sound now. We have to confront the question of how to do this.
How to use it.
And the Europeans, especially those from Vienna, now Max Steiner and Ernest Gold and so on, and Korngold, applied what they knew about instrumental music from the theater and opera and so on. And so it's something that early on I began to understand was what movie. Even before I knew it was Vienna, you know, because we already saw that as the proper way to do an action film or even a comedy. You know. But of course, there's a great debt industry of film to German and Austrian composers, tremendously. At the beginning, at least, you know, and what little bit I've learned about any of it, I feel a great debt, especially in orchestration.
Andre once, I thought, beautifully said that Korngold didn't sound like Hollywood, but rather that Hollywood, after a while, after Korngold had been there, suddenly sounded like him, so that the level of composition, which probably always was very high, but was very much influenced. Great composers. I think you shared the same composition teacher with Andre Tedesco, Mario Tedesco. How long were you with Tedesco?
Not long, I think 2 summers, very briefly.
And who was, in terms of composing, who was your main compositor?
I don't really know. You know,
if one can
I have written in such a kind of chameleon-like way, if you can say that. I used to do comedies when I was very young and do it in a certain style and change. And Star Wars required something else. It was more military and whatever.
Vienna used to be, it still is, but it used to be such a breeding for European history in terms of painters and writers, but also composers, obviously.
Here in Wien, I look around this incredible city. People that are here that have lived their lives here and look upon it every day. It could be routine. I wish that Viennese people could borrow my eye for 1 minute to look at the city with my eyes, and never having seen it before. It's the most incredible monument to a history that we know, but it is a physical evidence of this centuries-old history. It couldn't replace in terms of art and craft and so on. Seeing the city is an affirmation of the history that we have studied, and we can realize 400 or 500 years of a certain common thinking and behavioral norms that the society in Vienna and Austria and so on shared for so long, presents a history of an organization that is so envious. We cannot go back to the
No,
imperial
we don't
system.
want to.
And we don't
No.
want to do that. But this is a physical manifestation, evidence of a certain kind of cooperation and unified thought.
Which left great artistic.
It's almost unreal to be. What I wanted to do on the Sophia was only go to where some street was Beethoven was on, and breathe the air. Maybe it will help me. Maybe it'll give me some idea of how to write music. So it is obviously profound for anyone interested in music. I have been so pleased to visit with the Vienna. It's a dream for me, one of the great orchestras of the world, with a tradition that one feels immediately. But also, with the privilege of coming, I had the concern about whether the orchestra was comfortable with this style of music and how they would interpret it. And the idiomatic aspects of it would be something that they would not be grasping. And I couldn't have been more happily surprised. It was brilliant for me, the way they did it, and understood the phrasing in a way that I thought was particularly of a certain idiom of film music, which I know they don't play very often. So I have to comment on their great virtuosity and fantastic ability to cover all styles of music, including one that I don't think they play very much. Their virtuosity and just is an amazing part of their art. And for me, as a guest, a surprising one and a very happy surprise. You said to me, I want to play Star Wars.
Yeah.
You can't play Star Wars. You have to have trumpets and cymbals and all kinds of drums, and you know, it's not possible. Maybe you can play Leia's theme or something like this.
Exactly. Yep.
So I don't know how many we recorded, 12, 15 of them.
With markings, about 16 pieces.
16 pieces. Yeah. So I just went about picking ones that I thought would be appropriate for violin.
Yep.
The expectation of working with you was very, very exciting because to write something for any great virtuoso, you have the feeling that you could write anything. Maybe it's too difficult, but you write it anyway.
Yes, it is very difficult.
And then the pleasure of doing it with such a simpatico, maybe it's a good word, sympathetic performer, fulfilled every expectation and every bit of fun that I expected to derive from it. And it has been a joy, not work at all, totally fun.
Although you wrote almost all of the 16 themes, you had, I had
to arrange them and reorchestrate
reorchestrated
it, change the keys into whatever, all of that.
But that was a lot of work. I mean, doing Leia and Yoda and Across the Stars and the duel, of course, of Tintin, which we are also now playing here, and The Witches of Eastwick, which is even more difficult than the earlier version. What is more exciting and challenging than standing next to the also conducting? This is actually very intimidating, standing next to the man who obviously knows the music inside out. And I admire the way you rehearse in a very gentle, you speak about your music and how you bring things together.
The idea has been suggested that it might be an experience working together on stage. We haven't done it that very much.
Nope. Just hanging
this
with
is-
half the concert.
But
Yeah.
I have to confess
Yeah.
that at times with the orchestra, as we're working together, it would be good if I looked serious. You know, I wouldn't look too silly. But I have such fun doing it, Anna-Sophie, that I'm conducting and you're there, and I start to smile, almost laughing.
Yes.
I'm happy to look upon you, of course, but I have to realize this is serious business. This thing, it's
Yes.
quick, it's difficult.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It sounds easy, but it is not.
Trillion of notes. Yeah.
And so, but intimidation is always, you know, if I conduct for any great artist, will I be a sufficient conductor and accompanist for this person, and vice versa, back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yeah.
Human,
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
because it gives
I
a
think
little
Yeah,
edge.
exactly. Puts you on your toes.
It
Yeah.
puts you on your toes, and you work that way. We played 2 rehearsals with the orchestra. At the orchestra management came and said, "Can we play the Imperial March from Star Wars?" And I hadn't programmed that. I thought had already asked the brass to play quite enough of big music. And as I understand it, the brass players in the orchestra requested that we would play the Imperial March. So at the end of the rehearsal, we played it. They had the music. Everyone seemed to know it. And I have to tell you, it was honestly the best presentation of that march that I ever heard. It had such solidity and such power and force, but also control in the tone and the intonation of everything. It is powerful and forceful, but not forced into some airspace. A kind of strength that defines the word. That was certainly my favorite piece that they played. They played it as though they owned it, and I felt very grateful to them for asking me to play it at the end of the program. I loved it.